We drove 6 hours to attend my grandson's graduation. When we arrived, my daughter-in-law said there weren't enough tickets for us. We slept in the car that night. But at the ceremony, a hidden microphone inside her purse caught something that left the crowd stunned. My name's Ellen. I'm 68 years old, retired nurse, been married to Don for 45 years. We raised 3 kids in Roanoke, Virginia. Our oldest, Mark, was always a quiet boy. Did well in school, stayed out of trouble. He married Tessa about 20 years ago. She was different from us, very polished, very focused on appearances. I didn't mind that. I just wanted Mark to be happy. Tessa never liked me. I could feel it from day one. She was always polite but cold. The kind of person who looks through you at a family dinner. I'd bring homemade pies, offer to help with the dishes. She'd brush me off. Over time, I stopped trying as hard. But then James was born. That boy, he changed everything for a while. Mark and Tessa struggled financially back then, and we stepped in. Diapers, food, car seats, we helped with all of it. I even watched James 3 days a week, so they wouldn't have to pay for daycare. I don't say this to brag. I say it because that's what grandparents do. At least, that's what I believed. When Mark got that job in Charlottesville, we were proud. Happy for them. But things changed. Calls came less often. Visits became once or twice a year. And even when we did visit, we never stayed overnight. Tessa always had a reason. The house was being renovated, they had other guests, she wasn't feeling well. But I still sent birthday cards. I still called. I still loved them. Then came the graduation. It was a big deal to us. First grandson to graduate high school. Don and I marked it on our calendar a year in advance. We wanted to be there. A month before, I asked Tessa if they had the date and tickets sorted. She said, still waiting on final word. She kept it vague. I offered to help. She said, no need. I offered again. Still nothing. I should have taken the hint. We packed anyway. Drove 6 hours the day before. I called when we were 30 minutes away. She picked up and said, oh, I didn't think you were actually coming. That was the first slap. We pulled up around 6 p.m. She opened the door, didn't smile. Mark wasn't even home yet. There aren't enough tickets, she said. I stood there with a casserole dish in my hands like a damn fool. She didn't invite us inside. Didn't offer us water. Nothing. I asked if we could just stop in and say hi to James. She said he was out with friends. I could see the living room light on and a backpack on the floor through the window. We sat in our car for 3 hours before going to a Food Lion parking lot to sleep. Don didn't say a word. He just reclined the seat and stared up at the ceiling. I cried, quietly, so he wouldn't hear. The next morning, I couldn't just leave. I needed to at least see James. That's when I saw the local news van outside the school. They were letting family record messages for the graduates. I figured, what's the harm? I went up, told them I was James's grandmother. They handed me a mic. I said, James, it's Grandma. We drove all night to see you walk that stage. We weren't allowed in, but we love you more than words. We are so proud. Simple. Honest. I thought maybe, someday, he'd see it. What happened next wasn't planned by anyone. See, Tessa had brought this fancy purse with a little microphone clipped inside. She told someone later it was for a family highlights reel she was putting together. But the mic was still on. It recorded everything she said in the minutes before the ceremony. As the students were lining up backstage, she leaned over to her sister and said, I'm so glad we didn't waste tickets on his hillbilly grandparents. Can you imagine them here?
Jesus.
That mic caught every word. The school media team collected all the recordings that day, including hers and mine. At the end of the ceremony, they ran a video montage on the projector, messages, behind-the-scenes clips, happy moments. Then, suddenly, right after my little message to James, Tessa's voice played over the speakers.
Loud. Clear.
I'm so glad we didn't waste tickets on his hillbilly grandparents. Can you imagine them here?
Jesus.
There was a long pause in the room. Then whispers.
Gasps.
The principal scrambled to stop the video, but it was too late. The crowd had heard everything. I didn't know any of this until James came running out the front of the school, tears in his eyes. He wrapped his arms around me, tight. "Grandma, I had no idea," he said. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I held him like I used to when he was 5 years old. But the damage was already done. Tessa's words weren't just cruel. They exposed something deeper, something that had been rotting for years under the surface. And once it came out, there was no putting it back. What happened after that, what Mark said, what James did, what we decided to do, well, that's where the real story begins. After the ceremony, James wouldn't leave our side. He begged us to come back to the house. Said he'd make sure Tessa wasn't around. I told him no. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because I didn't trust myself not to explode. I didn't want to make a scene in front of him. That boy had already been through enough. But Mark showed up. He pulled into the school parking lot fast, got out, and walked straight up to Dawn and me. He didn't say hello. Didn't ask how we were. His first words were, "Why did you come?" I told Tessa we didn't have enough tickets. That was the second slap. Not even pretending anymore. "You never told us that," I said. "We drove 6 hours. Slept in the car. We were never even invited inside." He looked tired, angry, but also embarrassed. He glanced over at James, who was still clinging to Dawn's side. "Tessa didn't mean what she said," he muttered. "It was taken out of context." Dawn finally spoke. She called us hillbillies, Mark. "You really think there's a context for that?" Mark didn't answer. He just ran a hand down his face and looked away. We got in our car and left. James cried. I told him we'd talk soon. That we loved him no matter what. Back home in Roanoke, I thought maybe things would cool down. But then the clip went online. Apparently, a few parents had filmed the ceremony on their phones, including the projector screen. Someone uploaded the moment to Facebook, then TikTok. It got passed around. Graduation ceremony audio exposes DIL's brutal words about grandparents, thousands of views, dozens of comments. Some people defended us. Others laughed. But what hurt most was silence from Mark.
No apology.
No call.
No explanation.
Then James texted me. "Dad told me not to talk to you for a while. He said you're stirring up drama." I sat on the couch holding the phone, my hands shaking. Drama? We didn't do anything. We didn't say a word. All we did was show up. The next week, Don got a call from his old coworker, Ray. He said Tessa had posted something on her Instagram account. A long post about entitled in-laws trying to steal attention at their grandson's graduation. She painted herself as the victim. She didn't name us, but it was obvious. Then came the real blow. Mark sent us an email. A cold, corporate-sounding email. Given recent tensions and the ongoing online harassment Tessa is receiving, we think it's best to take a break from communication for the time being. Please understand this is not personal. Not personal? After everything we did. After all the years of support, love, and sacrifice. Don didn't say much, but I saw the way he looked at his phone every night, waiting for a text that never came. Weeks passed. Then months. We missed James's graduation party. We weren't invited. We sent a card for his 18th birthday. Never got a thank you. I didn't blame James. He was stuck in the middle, torn between love and loyalty. But I started to ask myself something I'd never dared to ask before. What if they were always going to cut us out? What if this whole thing wasn't an accident? But the moment they decided we weren't useful anymore, Tessa's words weren't just cruel. They were revealing. They told the truth she never said out loud, that we were tolerated, not loved. That, to her, we were a burden, an embarrassment, something to manage and keep at arm's length. But what she didn't count on was the one person who did love us, James. And once James learned the truth, he didn't forget it. He started digging into more than just her words, into old texts, old family photos, even the money we'd quietly sent over the years. And what he uncovered was the beginning of something neither Tessa nor Mark could control. James didn't stop calling. Even after Mark told him to cut us off, he'd sneak messages late at night, Small ones at first. I miss you. They're not telling me everything. Then, about 2 months after graduation, he sent a longer message. Grandma, I found the account. At first, I didn't know what he meant. Then he explained. During the pandemic, we'd sent Mark and Tessa close to $15,000 over the course of a year. Some of it we gave willingly, help with bills, groceries, car repairs. But a few transfers were hush-hush. Tessa didn't want it mentioned because it made her feel like a failure. We never made a fuss. We never even asked to be repaid. But James had found a savings account in his name, opened when he was 13. His parents had control of it. That part wasn't strange. What was strange is what he saw in the transaction history. Every one of our transfers, marked as gifts for James. Over time, the account held over $20,000. We thought the money went to the family. Utilities, rent, food. But they'd been stockpiling it in his name. Not for his use, just to keep it in a tax-free account. That wasn't the worst of it. James tried to transfer some of it for college expenses, but the account had been locked down 2 weeks before graduation. Mark had changed the password. He said it was for James's protection. When James confronted them, Tessa lost it. She accused him of being ungrateful, said we were manipulating him, that we'd always tried to buy love. Mark didn't say much. He just backed her up. That night, James packed a bag, called us from a friend's house. Can I come stay with you for a while? We picked him up the next day. He sat in our kitchen, looked around like he hadn't seen it in years. And then he cried. I didn't know how bad it was, he said. I thought you'd just stop visiting. That you didn't care anymore. That hit me hard, because for years I thought he had drifted, that maybe we'd lost him to their world. But the truth was, he'd been kept at arm's length, just like us. We didn't want to rush anything. He still had college starting in 2 months, but we let him stay. In that time, James started sharing more. He told us about the rules, the pressure, the way Tessa monitored everything, from his phone calls to his social media. He also told us about the video. Turns out, someone had clipped the graduation mic incident and sent it directly to the school board. Tessa was part of the PDA. She'd spearheaded a parent inclusion initiative. The hypocrisy didn't sit well with certain members. She was removed from her committee for conduct unbecoming. Then came the podcast. Apparently, someone in the district started a podcast about suburban hypocrisy. And yes, they covered our story. Didn't use names, but people in Charlottesville connected the dots fast. Tessa started losing brand deals. Her part-time influencer gig dried up overnight. And Mark? He started showing up in James's texts again. Not to apologize, but to warn. This is going too far. Your grandma needs to stop feeding this nonsense. You're making your mom look bad. He still called her your mom. Like she hadn't humiliated us in front of hundreds of people. James didn't reply. Then one day, he came into our living room, holding a folder. Inside, every receipt, every bank statement, every text about money. A full timeline of what we gave and how it was used. He said, I think you need to talk to someone. I didn't want to go there at first. I hate courtrooms. I hate drama. But then I remembered what Tessa said. Not just at the graduation, but in her Instagram post. They never helped us. They just made us feel small. That's when I realized this wasn't just a family rift. It was fraud. And James? He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was ready to help us set it all straight. We didn't go to a lawyer right away. I still had hope Mark would come around, that he'd sit down with us and talk this through like family. I even called once. Got his voicemail. Mark, it's your mother. We need to talk. Please. No response. That silence, that choice to ignore everything, was the final break. Dawn and I decided to get legal advice. Not to sue, not yet, but just to understand what our options were. We met with a quiet, sharp woman named Carla who'd handled estate issues before. She reviewed the folder James had compiled. The account, the transfers, the timestamps, the emails, the recorded graduation audio. It was all there. She took her time flipping through the pages, then looked me dead in the eye. You realize this could be seen as financial exploitation of elderly family members, she said. Especially if they claimed the money was going to one purpose and used it for another. I asked what that meant legally. It means you have leverage, she said. James didn't blink. He said, let's do it. Carla helped us draft a formal letter. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. Just a documented request for an accounting of all funds transferred, along with intent of use. She worded it carefully, enough to show we weren't bluffing. We sent it by certified mail. 2 weeks later, we got a reply. Not from Mark. From an attorney. A cold, 3-page letter denying any wrongdoing and stating that all money given was voluntarily contributed with no strings attached. They denied using James's name for financial benefit, but they made a mistake. They enclosed a copy of one transfer record as proof we had willingly given funds. In the notes section of that transaction, clear as day, it read, "For James's college fund, please don't use this for bills." That note was in my handwriting. I remembered writing it on the memo line of a check. It was the nail in the coffin. Carla smiled when she saw it. Now we go public. She didn't mean social media. She meant mediation. A legal one. Officially on record. And if that didn't work, civil court. That's when things started to fall apart on their end. Tessa tried reaching out to James first. He didn't answer. Then Mark left me a voicemail. Why are you doing this? We're family. You're embarrassing all of us. You need to stop before it gets worse. Worse for who, Mark? The story started to spread in town. People remembered the video. Parents started asking questions. One of the local news outlets called us for comment.
We said no for now.
But James? He started documenting everything. Screenshots, bank records, texts, video logs. He was building something. Something bigger than just Payback. He said, you spent your whole life being quiet, being kind. They counted on that. They used it against you. He wasn't wrong. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about what was coming next. Because when you've been lied to, manipulated, and humiliated in front of your own family, and your own grandson is the one fighting to make it right, what you do next isn't revenge. It's justice. We went through mediation first, just like Carla advised. Tessa and Mark showed up with their lawyer, all smiles and smug posture, acting like this was beneath them. Tessa didn't look at me once. But when the mediator laid out our documentation, every check, every note, every text that linked our money directly to James's name and benefit, her face changed. Especially when we played the audio. The original recording from her purse. The mediator paused it right after her line. I'm so glad we didn't waste tickets on his hillbilly grandparents. Dead silence. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. That day, we offered a simple settlement. Return the funds we had sent under false pretenses, $19 for 100, or we would take it to court and press for financial elder abuse. Their lawyer tried to haggle, suggested $5,000 and a sincere apology. Carla didn't even look up from her notes. She just said, "We'll see you in court." That was the turning point. Mark called us that night. I almost didn't answer, but Don said, "Pick it up." He didn't yell. He didn't apologize. He begged. He said Tessa was losing sponsorships. That James had posted something online, something big. I checked later and saw the post. It was a full write-up of everything that happened, titled, "How My Parents Tried to Cut Off My Grandparents, Lied About College Funds, and Got Exposed at My Graduation." It blew up.
Hedge.
TikTok. Even local news picked it up. People were commenting by the hundreds. Some criticized James for airing dirty laundry, but most supported him and us. That pressure worked. Mark called again the next day. This time he was crying. I don't know what to do. I didn't want it to go this far. I told him, it went this far the minute you let her shut the door in our face. The next morning, their lawyer sent over an agreement. Full repayment of the $19,400. A signed letter admitting misuse of funds. And a statement of apology drafted by Tessa herself. It wasn't heartfelt, but it was public. We didn't push further. We didn't take the lawsuit to trial. not because we couldn't, but because the truth was already out there. James moved in with us for the summer before college. We drove him to orientation ourselves. Before he left, he gave me something, an envelope with 2 tickets inside. Commencement for his freshman year. He said, "I don't care if they show up or not. These are yours. You earned them." And I cried like I hadn't cried in years. As for Mark and Tessa, we haven't seen them since. They're still together. Still putting out holiday cards with perfect smiles and fake warmth. But in our town, people remember. And behind those smiles, they know who looked away, who used family for gain, who called us hillbillies while cashing our checks. They don't say it out loud, but they know. And sometimes, that kind of truth, the kind that can't be undone, can't be hidden anymore, is the deepest revenge of all. Because we didn't just get paid back. We got our name back. And they'll never get theirs clean again.